Today I want to talk about deliverance by God's people, and my text is Nahum 1 verses 12 to 15. At this time in our history, people are recovering from the coronavirus. Every single country in the world has been affected by coronavirus. Everybody has been bracing and preparing. Many countries have closed their borders just to see if they can prevent the coronavirus from coming in, or to at least try to see how they can contain it. Do you know there was a time in history when all the nations of the world cowered when they heard of the Assyrians? According to historian Simon Anglin, the Assyrians created the world's first great army and the world's first great empire. This was held together by two factors: their superior abilities in siege war and their reliance on sheer, unadulterated terror. Leonard Cottrell writes in The Anvil of Civilization, and he says, "In all the annals of human conquest, it is difficult to find any people more dedicated to bloodshed and slaughter than the Assyrians. Their ferocity and cruelty have few parallels." Now, if you understand, one of the difficulties with the coronavirus is the number of people who die and how quickly they die. Well, what happened is that the Assyrians were moving in such force that they trod down the nations like dust, spread ruin and carnage through their lands, plundered their treasures, treated prisoners with savagery, and the dead with ignominy. They really were a force to be reckoned with, and everybody feared them. Life behind a city's wall when the Assyrian army drew close was terrifying. Assyria made sure of it. They pioneered the use of terror as a weapon, and they made the lives of their enemies a living horror story. Now, somehow we seem to be at a place now when this is happening to us, where everybody is fearing the coronavirus, and people within their own countries are wondering if they are going to survive. It was in a situation like this that God gave Nahum a word for the people of Judah, his people, as they were under bondage by the Assyrians. The Assyrians had come in and they had destroyed the cities. And the thing about the Assyrians is that they recorded everything. I have had the privilege of reading some of the things that have come out, some of the relief work that has come from the Assyrians. When they destroyed the country, they boasted they would decimate the country completely, and people were just fearful of them. Who did not surrender, they just destroyed. And when you surrender, they would do some savage things: pull out your fingernail, gouge out your eye, cut off your hand. They were really a set of terrible people. And one of the worst things I've read is that they would put you in a box just a little bit bigger, larger than you, and fill the box with nails and lock you in it. And every time you turn, the nails would rip you. I don't know if you can even begin to imagine this kind of cruelty. And this is what Assyrians did. So every country in the world was quivering when they heard the Assyrians were coming. And every single year, the Assyrians made a campaign of war, from one king to the next, all the way down to Sennacherib, all the way down to Sargon, Sennacherib, Tiglath-Pileser III, you name them, and they were wicked and they were vicious. And in the midst of this time, when they were prospering, or they were flourishing, God sent a message through Nahum to the people of Israel. In fact, the book of Nahum is really about the destructions of the Assyrians and how they were going to be stopped. You would have remembered the story of Jonah. He refused to go to Assyria, to Nineveh, which is the capital of Assyria, because of the ferocious nature of the people. He didn't want them to be saved. Here in the text we have before us Nahum 1 verses 12 through 15. It reads like this: "Thus says the Lord, though they are at full strength and many, they will be cut down and passed away." The "they" in this text refers to the Assyrians. And he says, when the Assyrians are at full strength, and they are many, not when they're weak, they'll be cut down and pass away. So here we have in verse 12 the declaration of the Lord. And what is this declaration? The first thing is, the Assyrians will be destroyed. Now, I can tell you, when the people in Judah heard that, it was mind-boggling. How could the Assyrians be destroyed? I mean, they were the force that everybody was afraid of. And some people might be saying, how or when will coronavirus ever stop? We don't know. But the possibility is God is God and God is sovereign. And hear what God says. I will do it when they are at full strength. So God was going to stop the Assyrians in their path when they were in full strength, when their army was strong, when their kings were strong, when they were going like a bulldozer and taking people over, when their campaign was, unbelievable. God said, in that time, when they are at full strength, I am going to stop them. You see, God is almighty. I can tell you that coronavirus will stop tomorrow, not next week, not even 2 or 3 months from now. But when God's purpose has been accomplished, God will stop it. No, you say, did God have a purpose when it was with the Assyrians? Of course he did. This is predicted prophecy, and then later on we'll see the result of it. But God used Assyrians to punish the Syrians, who were wicked. And later on, God is going to use the Babylonians to punish the Assyrians. So he says, I am going to stop them when they are at full strength. Notice the second thing he says. Not only when they are at full strength, but when there are many. So it is not, God is going to do it in the height of their activity. When they are their strongest and their best, God says, I'm going to stop them. Now, what we must understand is that shows us who is in control. God is in control. And no matter how it seems like somebody is invincible, they are not invincible with God. And that's one of the things you have to remember. Even if coronavirus seems invincible, God is still in control. Not only is he still in control, he has the wherewithal to stop it. If you remember, he spoke and the world came into being. So what then with coronavirus? Hear the rest of verse 12 and verse 13. It says, though I have afflicted you, I'll afflict you no more. And now I will break his yoke from off you and will burst your bonds apart. Who is God talking to? He's speaking to his people. So first he says, I'm going to stop Assyria. And then he says, guess what? The affliction of Judah is over. Now, what I want to say, so God was allowing the Assyrians to afflict them? Yes. Yes, God had afflicted his people. And you must remember that nothing just happens. So God allows things to happen, and God always have a holy purpose when he allows things to happen. So Judah was in a place where they needed to be punished by God. And we'll see why. And now God is saying, I am going to stop the punishment. I am going to stop Assyria. I am going to cause them to not be able to continue the savagery that they are in. Now, simply, we have to stop and understand that when difficulties come upon the Christian, God allows it because God wants us to turn to him. And the Bible is always like that. God has afflicted them, but God's punishment is ended. You remember in Isaiah he said the same thing in chapter 40. He says, comfort my people, because you have suffered enough. I am going to come now. Notice, God is going to remove the yoke. You ask, what is the yoke? Well, in the time when Assyria took you over, you had to pay them tribute. You had to build their roads. They had fantastic roads. You had to build their temples. So apart from paying tax to them, then you had to go into slavery, and they use you for what they want to use you. So there was a big yoke, a big burden upon the people. He says, I'm going to remove the yoke and I'm going to burst the bonds. So all that Assyria has done to bring you to servitude and the way they have ripped off your society, I'm going to stop it. We have some of that in modern day, although we won't get into there today, but we have some of that today, where we see some nations that have taken advantage of other nations, and that's what the Assyrians did. Now, if we apply this text to today, one of the things we're going to say is that there comes a time when God is going to remove this coronavirus. God says it is enough, and he will stop. Just like the plagues in Egypt, he will stop when he decides to stop. Let us go on. Verse 14 says this, and verse 14 is directed to the people of Nineveh. The Lord has given command about you. No more shall your name be perpetuated. For the house of your gods I will cut off. The carved image and the metal image I will make your grave, for you are vile. Wow, what a word. So here is what God is saying to Nineveh. Your destruction is coming. First he announced that he's going to stop them. Then he tells his people that, listen, alright, you have suffered enough. And then he sends a word directly to Nineveh. And the word is, you are going to be destroyed. And so will also your gods. The first thing God says, I am going to remove your name. Nineveh's name will be removed. I don't know if you know where Nineveh would be. Nineveh would be located where we have Iraq today. And after Nahum's prophecy, when Babylon really destroyed Assyria, Assyria's name basically fell off. There are some people who believe that some of the Assyrians form a base for Germany later on. There are many theories. But Assyria as a nation never existed again. God says, I'm going to wipe you out. In fact, some of you might be hearing about Assyria for the first time. You might have heard of Nineveh when Jonah was going down there. And then you might not have realized that Nineveh was the capital of this great country, Assyria. They had several capitals, but Nineveh was one that we are familiar with because of Jonah. He says, I am going to move your name. Then he says, secondly, I am going to destroy your gods. Now, in the ancient world, usually people believe that it is the gods that cause them to win. And this is the reason why Moses had said to God, what must I tell them your name is? Because that God was recognized by his ability, what he was able to do. And God said to him, I can't do anything, so tell him I'll be what I'll be. So here he says, I am going to decimate your gods. And I'm going to destroy them totally. And you're going to see that your gods are worthless. God is always in the business of showing that there's only one God. And the images that we have, they are just our own images. And so God shows that he is the living God. And thirdly, he says, guess what happened, Nineveh? Your own wretchedness is going to bring you to your end. Your vileness. One of the things that we have learned from the ancient world is that the atrocities that they were involved in came up to haunt them. Let me tell you how Assyria was set up, how they behaved. They always had an army. Every man was on a 3-year cycle. First year he trained, second year he went to war, third year he spent with his family. Then the next year he trained, next year he goes to war, the 6th year he spent with his family. So there are always enough people in their army. And guess what? When they went and they boast about how cruel they were. But what we are understanding from some of the psychological things that we read from that time is that some of them, when they came home for the year that they spent with their family, they were so bothered by the brutality and the brutal things they did. Much like we hear that people from war come back and they have all these psychological issues. It happened then too. Because if you can think of a human being just gouging out a man's eye, pulling a man's tongue out of his mouth, these are some of the things they pull out your fingernail, just like that. You can understand that the memory of those things really affected them. And so here God says, your wretchedness is going to bring you to your death. Your vileness is going to haunt you. You're going to have some psychological problems. It's going to destroy you. And you are going to just be completely removed. Now, let's go to verse 15. Verse 15 is a verse probably you know. It says, behold upon the mountains the feet of him who brings good news, who publishes peace. Keep your feast, O Judah, fulfill your vows, for never again shall the worthless pass through you. He is utterly cut off, and here is a promise to the people of God. He's saying that in the midst of the struggles we have, we must remember that God is God. So the disclosure of God is found in verse 15. The first thing he says, peace is near. Now, of course, our understanding of peace, of near rather, and God's understanding of near is not necessarily the same thing. We want it like tomorrow. But he says peace is near. He says, in essence, he's saying there's going to be an end to all the destructions that you see. Peace is near. Peace in the Hebrew text is not the absence of war, but peace is the well-being of the nation. So God is saying, very soon the nations will be at a place where everything is well, where there is shalom, which means that everything is well. You're going to go back to your crops and all that kind of stuff. Everything is going to be good. It's going to be back, hunky-dory, as it were. But here is the critical part of all of this. He says, obedience is required by you. You, Judah, need to be obedient. He says you have to keep your oath. You have to keep your feasts. That's what he says. May I read that for you again? Because I think this is the crux of the matter. He says, O Judah, he says, who publishes feasts? Keep your feasts, O Judah. Fulfill your vows. That's the key. The key is the obedience of the people of God. And here we are. And we could hear the Lord speaking to, in answer to the prayer of King Solomon. He says, if there are problems, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. Every time God allows a crisis for us, it is because we have moved away from God's way. When we look in the world, we were talking the last time about upholding the holiness of God. When we look in the world today, we are seeing so many things that are not in line with God. Abortion, homosexuality, there are so many things, so many immoral acts that are against the word and the command of God. Divorces are left, right, and center. Even in the church, we see people loving the things of the world rather than loving God. Loving pleasure. Pleasure has become a major problem for us. And how easy it is for us not to come to church and go to some pleasurable place. Well, the coronavirus has really put a stop to entertainment, even though they're having visual parties. The coronavirus has shut people away from many of the practices that are evilous. And what is essential for the healing of the land is for the obedience of the people of God. And this is why he says, Judah, you have to obey. We need to stop and pause and think. How have I contributed to the world moving away from the command of God? And even if I myself have kept it, how have I helped other people to fall in line with the commandments of God? Do I just turn a blind eye and say, half of them business that, me no business? Or do I engage them in terms of the practices that they are involved in? But even before we reach them, what about me? Am I drawn away by the things I see in the world? Am I chasing the same kind of things? This is what Judah was doing. That's why they found themselves in a predicament. Now, I don't know coronavirus start. I've said that to you before. I don't know its origin. But I know that God allowed it. And I know that God allowed it because his people have walked away from him. God says peace is near. But what is important for that peace to come is for the obedience of his people. Obedience is required. Just like what he says in Chronicles, the land will be healed when my people turn away from their wicked ways and seek my face. I want you today, as you listen to me, as you think about your life, as you think about the last few weeks, if there are some things that you need to confess, I wonder how close you are to your God. I want to encourage you that part of the solution for the world is for us who are Christians to take some time, to be right with God. The last thing God said in that verse is, I am going to annihilate the Assyrians. I am going to move them completely. They'll never ever even be heard about. We heard that before. He's telling that now to Judah. But the healing of the land and the removal of the Assyrians was dependent on the obedience of the people of God. I want to say, if we are going to get God's favor, we need to be obedient. Hear what the text says. If I regard iniquity in my heart, the Lord will not hear me. There are a lot of people praying now, all over the globe, but we are not ready to be obedient to God. How then will our prayers be answered? I challenge you today that if you are one of those who are praying, hear the text. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, then you can ask what you will and it will be done. Many are praying, but they are not abiding the word. They are not being obedient. May God through this word cause you to stop. May God through this word cause you to allow the Spirit to fill you. And may you become obedient so that God can be glorified. God bless you.